We're going to use this section to go over a few very basic concepts that are important to responders, particularly to civilian responders. And a lot of this is targeting the serve-or folks. To those who are very experienced, who've gone out on disaster settings, this may seem very, very basic to you, but we've gotten feedback that it's important to review some of these basic concepts. So we're going to use this next and last piece for today to go over ICS basics, just the basics. We're also going to go over the concept of CCP, or Casualty Collection Point, as well as military rank, and then etiquette for when civilians are working in partnership with the military. So that's in store for you guys, all right? So I'm going to do the ICS overview. Now, I'm not an ICS expert. I'm an ER doctor. I work in a hospital, right? So I don't work with an ICS day to day. But this stuff is really important. We'll get questions in just one sec, yeah. So what I'm going to do is review basic concepts, just so we all have that same foundation. And it's going to be a review for many people. Okay, so what is ICS? It's the Incident Command System. And this is a framework that can be applied to any situation, a small event, a large event, and it allows teams to respond effectively, agencies to respond effectively and efficiently, all right? Its history is in wildfires. And now it is applied to all hazards. Just about anything at all, you can use ICS. So earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, right? Hazardous materials, bad car crashes, right? Also special events, the eclipse, parades, 4th of July, right? The Democratic National Convention, and making your favorite dessert, okay? So the history of ICS, it really got its start after a horrible fire in 1970 in Southern California. Massive fire, a lot of agencies responded, and they did a good job, but when they did the after-action analysis, looked back at what happened, they realized, okay, they got a lot of stuff right, but there were some things they could have done better. What they concluded was that their weaknesses in response were not due to a lack of resources or a lack of personnel. It was weaknesses in management, in communication. It was in duplication of efforts, a lack of prioritization. Out of that, then, was a big push to expand ICS, promote its use, and now we're where we are today. And it represents best practices for emergency response, and it allows a very coordinated approach to dealing with simple or very, very complicated disasters, okay? Virtually all agencies within the US, EMS agencies and disaster response, use ICS. Really powerful. It's widespread. And other countries use it too. We tend not to think too much often about what other countries do. It's been widely adopted in very different parts of the globe. And now the UN, and actually for quite a while, has promoted ICS as the standard that should be adopted by countries. Right. So you had a question.
Is knowing ICS really that important if you work in the hospital?
Gosh, that's a great question. What's your name?
Bill.
Bill, what a great question. So, what's this all about? Do we really need to know this stuff? I mean, right, we come together, we do the exercises, and then we go back, many of us, to our clinic or hospital setting, many of us in ODMT or serve-or. Well, Bill, you said, right?
Yeah.
Bill, it is important because this is the foundation. It's incumbent on every person who is doing disaster response to know this stuff. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds, but it is important we all know the basic concepts so that when we come together, we know the same terminology, don't we? When you talk about something, planning, position, logs, I know what you mean. When you mention a certain form, I know what you mean. You say you need something, you need help with maybe the 206, I know what you mean. Really important. If we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's all commit to knowing this stuff. You don't necessarily have to be experts. So one key concept of this, each person reports to only one person. One and only one person, right? A basic concept, right? But we trip over that a lot sometimes in a chaotic situation. Everyone should have one supervisor, and that's who you report to. And that is called unity of command, okay? And that helps to prevent freelancing. That means just people going off on their own, deciding you need to report to me. Well, I have one supervisor. I report to that person. It also ensures accountability. Very, very important as situations can escalate, as more and more agencies and personnel get involved, right? So we need to respect this. And for this exercise in particular, think of these concepts that I'm reviewing and just tuck them away. And for this weekend, just be thinking of that and do your best to model that. All right? Just going to try to keep this interactive. Yes?
What is the HICS and how does it relate to ICS?
Gosh, you guys are full of questions. Wow. So HICS, who knows what HICS is? So it's a ICS that is applied to hospitals. So it uses that same framework, that same principle, and it's for a hospital-based setting. So how does a hospital deal with a surge? How do they deal with a power outage? How do they deal with a mass shooting on the campus? So probably many of you have taken HICS courses, right? Was there another? Yes.
Is there a role for a bear in ICS? And the second part is, I have this pot of honey. What is it with this dessert thing? Can you tell me about ICS and desserts?
Wow, that really is a great question. There's always a role for support animals. Logistics could answer that question, but yes, I would let that adorable little creature know, yes, we could find a role. And then, yes, you know, we're going to talk about desserts in just a second.
Good.
Yeah, all right. Great question.
Great answer.
You're so sweet. Yes.
What if I wanted to learn some more about ICS? Where could I pick that up?
Wow, so where do you go if this wets your whistle? You know ICS, but you want to do a deeper dive. Where do you go? All right? I don't know why these guys are laughing. So there is, yeah, so if you just Google FEMA and ICS Resource Center, oh my gosh, lots of resources and lots of online courses. And there are courses you could take in person. The classroom courses, too, are phenomenal. So you've got a variety of options available to you to learn more. Did you have a question? Yeah, go ahead and hold that up.
I have this handy guy, because I can't remember most of the stuff all the time. It's a little NIMS incident command system handy guy.
That is fantastic. So we refer to that as a cognitive aid, right? So for those of you who don't want to keep everything up here, that's an excellent resource. Tuck that in your pocket, right? The whole idea is make this workable for you, right? Make this a tool that you know how to apply. If you rely on the cognitive aid, great, right?
Question, is there an app for that?
Oh, I love that. Is there an app for that? The resounding answer is yes. And what's the app's name that you guys were referring to?
The brain is informed.
Okay. Yes.
The other recommendation is join your local community emergency response team and go to a lot of the exercises because they rely on ICS, and the best way to learn it is to just train it and do it over and over and over.
Phenomenal, right? Don't just stop here. Don't rely on these big exercises. Go back to your community, stay active, stay engaged. All right, one more and then I'm going to move on a little bit. Yes?
So case in point, last year so we didn't know who to contact, and so we were just kind of wandering around, and the whole thing fell apart.
So I would say this, unity of command. So under ICS, everybody should have one supervisor that they report to. So if at any point this weekend you're not sure who your supervisor is, who you report up to, find out, ask. There should be one person that each individual reports to. So that's moving forward, that would be the way to go, okay? All right. So another key concept, supervisors are given authority to direct those underneath them. That's the chain of command. You're a supervisor. You've got a few people under them. ICS gives you the authority to direct and control and command those individuals, those folks. Yes,
So,
Miss.
to his question, with the chain of command, unless that person was at the very, 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 very top, shouldn't there have been somebody over that person's supervisor that when those people didn't know who they should be reporting to because somebody left, there should be a new person?
Yeah, I'm not sure the specifics of that situation, but generally, yes. If that supervisor had left, they should have done a briefing with the incoming person who's going to assume that position, including giving them instructions on who is under that chain of command as well. So all those things should have taken place.
So on that.
Hold that thought? Yes.
So the deal was that we got our team together, and we got assigned a new leader. We just all said, hey, why don't you do it? And so they did it, and then we went and found out who we report to. So we fixed it ourselves. But up until then, it was a mess. We're just, we're trying to find our team
Okay.
leader.
So moving forward under ICS, when you're given an assignment, then and there should be clarity on who your supervisor is. So for the rest of today, for the weekend, and then beyond, within this system, know who your supervisor is. And if it's not clear, then go up the chain so that you're not in that situation. Was there another question? You sure? Okay. All right. So one of the nice features of ICS too, and I referenced this earlier, this gives a common language, a common structure that different agencies use, and that is so key, right? And I would recommend, and we're not always good about this, but I would recommend speaking plainly and try to avoid using abbreviations, right? You'll hear things this weekend, the jock, the jick. Not everyone is going to know what that is. And don't assume that people know that. Spell things out, just try to be as plain as you can. So another nice feature about ICS too, and this sometimes catches people not by surprise, but it's not always intuitive. ICS, you fill the positions based on expertise, based on skills. It does not matter what degree someone has. It does not matter what position they have on their day-to-day. If they can do that job and do it well, that's probably the best person to be in that position. Right? And that's a bit different than how things run often in corporate setting or in a hospital.
Yeah, I just want to second that. Trish talked about paramedics as lead deputies, and that's a perfect example that in the quote civilian world, doctors rock and we can do whatever we want, and we're not very good at. Well, really, the paramedics make much better team leaders because that's what they do every day in their job. They're better with radios, they're better at communicating, they're better at planning and things that
Yes.
manage a team in the ICS system, and that's one of the things we all have to get used to.
Absolutely, absolutely. In a disaster, it is so helpful for people who do this day in and day out to be in the command positions.
Get a bear, get a team leader.
Normally no, but I would make an exception for you. Okay. All right. Central to making ICS operational is to identify what are your objectives. Right? So there's a problem. It could be any problem. You've got to figure out what you need to get done, right? And articulate that. What are your objectives? How do you prioritize those? And how are you going to work together to meet those objectives? That has to be explicit, that has to be spelled out, and from that comes your strategy. Okay? And then you'll hear IAP. That's just a document that is created by the planning staff, by the incident commander, that spells out what are the objectives, how are you going to get that done, right? I was looking for another slide. So ICS also contracts and expands as it's needed. It's marvelously flexible. It could be applied to something as little as a fire at a dumpster and as something as enormous as Hurricane Katrina with national implications. And it's made to do that, to contract and expand as you need that. You fill the roles as you need them, right? So think of it as, you know, for those who work in a hospital, there's someone who's sick. I work in the ED. Maybe there's someone who's sick and you bring some personnel in. Let's not do the ED. Let's do, say, inpatient. And you've got a team there that are doing an assessment, and they have their skills, they have their resources, and maybe that patient gets sicker and sicker. And now you need someone with more expertise to come in. And now maybe you've called the rapid response team or the code blue team. There's going to be a handoff, and that team, that whole team that's providing care, has the same objectives, they use the same terminology, they follow the same protocols, they follow the same structure. ICS, in a way, are those tools that organizations use to work together to be efficient and effective. All right, this is a really important concept, span of control. So how well do you do if you've got a supervised 10, 12 people? Is it easier to do a few or 12?
It's a lot easier to do a few.
Right? So span of control is the concept that people get overwhelmed if they are supervising more than 7 people. The sweet spot, probably 3 to 5. ICS as a structure allows 3 to 7. But beyond that, you really want to think about changing how you are organizing things. So you'll hear that concept, span of control. Yes?
We got 9 on our team today.
Right. Right. So,
Can you speak to that?
yeah.
So last year, when you had the same issue,
Yep.
bringing in the incident command within the the MRRTs, while you had 2 team leaders, one military, one civilian, it doesn't mean that everybody within that group is going to respond back to the team leader. So what we were able to do was to delegate within our MRRT certain individuals who would, like for the military side, they only really responded to their military leader because there was no need for me to know what was going on.
Fantastic
Versus
explanation.
the other smaller things like going to the bathrooms. The team leader, I was so inundated with volumes of information, so I had delegated the communications person to deal with that, and then they reported to me on the need to know, because when you go transports and things like that, and that was a great way to not have to deal with 12 people all at once.
So we set up the teams today. And how many team leads were on each team? 1 or 2? 2. 12-person teams, 2 leaders, civilian and military. So the doctrine for the MRTs, teams of 12, civilian and military, and then parallel command structures, right? So this is consistent with the span of control concept.
Although our team
Yeah.
has 13 members and there's only 4 civilians, so they've got 9. I just assumed
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes do we go beyond that? We do, right?
and they're
That's
military,
life.
so they're probably better at it. Yes.
But yeah,
When you have these teams, we are in groups of 2. We are always in groups of 2. That is a sub-team. One of those people take the lead, and it is a point of reporting to the IC, not both people. So you have a team of 9 people. You have your lead. You have 4 teams of 2. The IC, in that team lead perspective, has only got 4 reports.
great questions. Does anybody else have any comments? And this is why we're doing this. I mean, it's really important that people get a chance to chew on this stuff. And again, for those who do this every day, I get it. This could be a little dry. But it's important that we think this over and make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay? And this is just showing span of control, ideally keeping the numbers between 3 and 7. Okay? All right. So I'm going to talk now about the structure for ICS and who does what. And I'm sure you guys have all seen this, right? Has anyone not seen this? Okay. So the command staff are a few folks who report to incident command. The liaison officer, safety, public information, and then you've got a few people as the general staff. And that's ops, planning, logistics, and finance, with the IC over on top. Now, I included this picture solely because I really like this photo, and I'm imagining she looks like she's having a whole lot of fun, and I picture a disaster going on behind her, but she's got it under control. So, overall responsibility for the incident, ensuring incident safety, providing information to folks internally and externally, and maintaining liaison, right? And then the other command positions. So a nice way to think about this, and I have borrowed from Terry Schmidt, who's an emergency physician that I work with, all right, let's apply this not to a disaster, but to making some Rice Krispies, all right? So the incident commander might say, hey, team, let's make some Rice Krispies, right? The planning chief is going to be tasked with putting that recipe together. The logs chief, right? They're going to go out and get all those ingredients. The operations chief is going to actually get it done. And finance is going to pay for the ingredients. Okay? Yes?
What happens if one of the physicians is in the field and you don't have an ops chief, for example?
Well, then typically the incident commander would take that over. What would safety do? Safety would keep our tongues from being burned if it was too hot. No, but just overall making sure that everyone was safe. Okay. Okay. All right, and that just shows, again, the staff positions. All right. So after the exercise, you go home. Let's say something happens, you guys are mobilized, right? So what can you expect? Right? So you want to check in. Ideally, you would be getting an assignment pretty early on, and that's the time you would be given a supervisor, and you should have a really clear understanding of what your roles are, and again, who you report to. You should also have a clear idea of what resources are available, what the overall objectives are. There will be an initial briefing, you'd get that information. You'd be able to identify your coworkers, right? Any other work assignments, safety procedures. Okay. A couple concepts about demob. When it's time to demobilize, you want to make sure you finished all the tasks, all the paperwork, You would brief your replacements, subordinates, and follow any checkout procedures and complete any post-incident reports, right? Basic stuff. Now at home, what's important to do? Periodically, I would say just review ICS. Pull out that little manual. Go online, take a look. Take a refresher course. Go further than what you've done. Keep it functional and operational. I would say too, look at what gear you have. Look at what you don't have that you may want to have. Make sure that you're ready to go. And use this opportunity to look. Make sure you've got cash, credit cards, any medicines, okay? I just want to underscore, when there's a real event, it is not medicine as usual. It's a whole different situation. It's a different context. The way things are organized is it's different. And it's important that we are all prepared as we can be, okay? So, again, just an overview of some very basic concepts. I hope you guys found this useful. I know it's hard to do on a late afternoon when the room is 80 degrees. Was this helpful at all? Helpful? All right.